Hey everybody, Rich here. I thought I'd make a video on the processes and the other things that I went through to install a dual battery system on my pontoon boat using the BlueSeas Add A Battery system. And I used the one rated at 120 amps. In my close to 70 years, I've done an awful lot of AC circuitry, DC circuitry, installed relay switches, things like that. But I've never done a dual battery system. So I imagine, like you, I decided to do some research and hopefully find a bunch of videos on it, because I love to learn by watching. I see better that way visually. Alright, found about 3 or 4. Wasn't really happy with any of them. To me, there wasn't a lot of detail. So what I decided to do was make this video and put it in the detail that I think would be more useful to two groups of people especially. And that's where I'm aiming this thing. First group is those that are brand new to the boating world. Welcome, glad you're here. Interest in pontoon boats and sales of pontoon boats has just basically skyrocketed. If you go out on the lakes like I do, the 4 general lakes I go out on here around North Carolina, if you ride around and you take a look at the docks, every other boat's a pontoon boat. So there's tons of them out there. They're the party boat, all right? And it was something that really amazed me in my readings was the number of people that go out and buy pontoon boats, and this is their very first boat. And in my book, they have no idea what they're getting into. And I don't mean that detrimentally. What I'm meaning, let me give you a comparison. They kind of like compare the boat to the car. Do people do a lot of maintenance on the car, preventive maintenance? No, they sure don't. Doing lucky to add oil, water, and maybe, I don't know what, wash it. But you old salts know, you can't do a boat like that. Boat requires constant attention, maintenance, and everything if you don't want to break down out on the water. And breaking down out on the water is very different than breaking down on land. It really is. Alright, so I want to get some ideas across to these newcomers and something maybe help them out. The second group I want to work with in getting some more information to is those who have little to no experience in working with DC circuits, switches, relays, things like that. Okay, you don't have to be a Tesla or have an electronics engineering degree or anything like that to install this system. To use a computer term, all right, the Add A Battery system from BlueSeas is about as plug and play as you're going to get. Really simple, and there's just some research that you do need to do, some things you do need to know, and we'll go over those. This is going to be a long video. It's not going to be short. It's going to be long for 2 reasons. One reason is, I don't know about you, but I can't not tell you how many episode 1s I've seen of how to do a project and never could find any other episode. Or I found 2 and never found episode 1. So, this is going to be the whole pizza pie, all right? It's going to be long. Second reason it's going to be long is I'm going to get off on some tangents, all right? When I hit a term that I don't think a newcomer might understand, I'll go over that term, and then we'll continue the conversation of wherever we were. So, not going to be short, and I'm going to break this down into basically 4 sections. First section is what we're doing now, laying out the ground rules, what we're going to do, all this kind of neat stuff. Second section is going to be what I call the talking head. Somebody just walked by and looked at me like, what's that old coat doing now? Okay, the second section is going to be the talking head. That's where we're inside, and I've got on the dining room table a couple of batteries and all the parts, and don't tell the old lady I got batteries on the table or she'll kill me. So everything will be laid out there. We'll go over why are we doing this? Why do you want to do this? How are we going to do this? What does each part do? How does it talk to the other parts? Things like that. And at the end, we'll go over a wiring diagram. And it's a roadmap to success as far as I'm concerned. Some of you old coots out there like me know, or old salts, I'm sorry, the guy just kind of broke my train of thought. Some of you old salts know that a wiring diagram can really save you because it keeps you from making any kind of wrong connection, damaging any kind of equipment, damaging anything, or even hurting yourself. Some of you don't need it. Bless your hearts. I do. Alright, once we go over that, that'll be the ending of the talking head section, and we'll come out and do what everybody's waiting for. We'll turn some wrenches. Alright, we'll install the batteries, we'll install the switches, we'll install the relays, yada yada yada. What we won't show is pulling cable. Alright, I gotta pull a bunch of cables. basically put, it's from the battery to the helm. All right, first tangent. Newcomers, the helm's where you sit and drive the thing. Some people call it a console. Technically, it's a helm. All right, that's where your controls are. It's where your steering wheel is. All right, that's the helm. So from the battery to the helm is about 7 feet. You're not going to push a cable 7 feet because you'll be tripping over it. What you've got to do is go down the conduit, under, around, back up under, and that 7-foot run turns out to be a 22-foot run for me. All right. But then all my cables, all my wires are all together going the same route, safe and protected. So that's important to do. All right. So won't show that because that takes a long time, and I tend to cuss a lot when I pull cables. All right. Once we've done that, then we're going to go and do the testing. I've got a big trough. We'll fill it up full of water, drop the motor into it. I don't like ears. Doesn't work on my DF-150 that well. So we'll drop it in, and first thing we're going to test is the house battery. The house battery, you old salt snow, that's the one that runs your lights, your electronics, and all that other kind of good stuff. Then we'll test the start battery. Start battery, that's the one that starts the motor. So we'll get that all checked out. Once we're all happy with that, clean up, go inside, and do the fourth and final section, which is, we'll go a little summary of what we've just done. And then I'm going to go into a lot of detail on what did this stuff cost me. Okay? Because I hate watching a video on YouTube and thinking, man, that's a great project. I wonder what he's going to tell me that's going to cost. And he never does. There's a difference between doing maybe a $200 project and a $2,000 project, right? So it's nice to know whether or not you want to get started or do any more investigation. I'll give you a good idea. Do I understand that, yes, what it cost me to do it here in North Carolina might be cheaper than in California or Florida? Hey, might even be cheaper than next year. Who knows? But at least it'll give you a new range idea of what it's going to cost, whether or not you might be interested in doing it. All right, so that's the plan. 4 sections, long video, few tangents here or there, and it's hot as all get out, and I got more neighbors walking by thinking I'm crazy as all get out, which, yeah, they got that right. But we'll go inside now and start the talking head section on the why, the how, and the other components. Take care. See you inside. All right, so here we are inside, getting ready to answer the $64,000 question. Why am I going to go to all the trouble, all the expense, the hassle of putting in a dual battery system? Before I do that, though, a couple of things I want to go over. A couple of disclaimers, if I may. First of all, not George Lucas, not Steven Spielberg. Don't make a lot of movies. My camera I'm using is, like me, older than dirt and on its last legs. On top of that, just downloaded a brand new video editing program, and it's kicking my butt. I'm sure some of you can understand what that's like. So go for the information. No Academy Awards here, okay? As you saw the first part, it's hard to tell I even had eyes out there. The sun was blinding me, the whole 9 yards. So, you know, don't worry about production that much. If that's all you got to write about, I'll tell you right now, I'm not even going to read that. So, just let's learn something, hopefully. Hopefully I got something to pass on that's worthwhile. Second thing is, that's my boat out there. What do I mean by that? Real simple. From the day I pulled that thing in from the dealer, I've been crawling all over it going, where does this cable go? Where does that wire go? What's this switch for? And all that kind of stuff. For example, I got 4 accessory switches out there that has things hooked to it, and the company couldn't even take time to label them. So I had to track them down and figure out what they were for. Not a happy camper on the wiring with that boat out there. Okay, having said that, like I said outside, you don't have to be a Tesla or have an engineering degree. This is pretty simple. But you need to know some things about your boat. You need to find them out. Okay, where the wires go, what do they do? My color code and your color code is going to be different based on brand, based on model, the whole 9 yards. So don't blow your boat up and blame me. Do your research, okay? Do your research, know your boat. Third and final disclaimer I got is real simple. I'm going to be talking a whole lot of different brand names. Everything from Interstate to Duracell to Stanley. I don't get anything from these people. They don't even know I'm doing these videos. Probably some of them wish I weren't. But I don't get anything, all right? So this is just the stuff that I bought because either that's what I wanted to spend my money on, or that's what I could afford, or that's what I felt was a good product. Just that simple, all right? So no rewards here. I could be contacted if you want to give me one. Okay, so $64,000 question. Why am I going to all this trouble? Let's continue a little thing I started outside when I did a comparison on, do people maintain their cars? Do people maintain their boats? Let's keep that vehicle boat comparison going for a little while. For example, I've got 2 trucks out there, pretty old. They're not old, but you know, they're not brand new. And if I open up the hood on both of them and look down, I'm going to see a battery. One battery, just one battery. That battery was designed to do one thing very well, and that is provide a high burst of energy anytime the ignition switch is turned to the starter to get the starter running to get the motor started. Okay, it's just that simple. That's what the batteries were designed for, start the motor. However, does that mean that's all they're going to do? No. What else do they do? Well, secondary purpose, and very secondary I might add into their design, is to provide 12 volts DC power to anything that needs it on the vehicle. For example, headlights run off a 12 volt, dome lights run off a 12 volt, your radio runs off a 12 volt, just about everything does on there, okay, that's electronic. And in some things, you can actually run them without the motor running. For example, I can go out there and get in either one of my trucks, turn the headlights on, headlights will come on. But that's a one-way flow of energy. That's energy out of the battery. That's a negative flow. And we'll talk about positive and negative flows here in a minute. All right, so I get in that car. I can crank it up. I can go to Lowe's to pick up something for the project. I guarantee you out there in North Carolina, something's running on my tongue. I guarantee you out there in North Carolina, I'm going to have my air conditioner on because it's hot. I can guarantee you, being a child of the 60s, I'm going to have some classic rock and roll going, that's for sure. I always turn my headlights on because both of my trucks don't have that automatic running lights, and I lived in Europe for dang near 15 years and learned the safety factor of running with your headlights on. If you don't do it, you really ought to. Okay, so I turn my headlights on, and there's all kinds of other things, no telling what's going on. And I'm running down the road. Do I care? No, don't care. Not worried about the battery one bit. And why am I not worried about the battery? Because there's a little item hooked onto that motor that does something for me. And for the battery, more than likely, okay? And that is the alternator. The alternator's one and only purpose is to put power back into that battery that's being drained from it from any use of or any load. There's another term for you, load. When we talk about loads, or when your mechanic asks you about what kind of load do you have on your battery, he's talking into what's using your battery, what kind of lights, horn, whatever, and he's also wanting to think about that in the way of amps. How many amps does your light take? How many amps does your horn take? How many amps does your whatever take, okay? So that's what we talk about when we mean load. It's something taking power from the battery. But the alternator is pushing power into the battery. So nobody, you shouldn't be worried about it. As long as your electrical system's working fine, that alternator will keep your battery up to running charge, the whole 9 yards of what it needs to do, so the next time you go out and start your car, no problem. However, if you sit there, and when I come home, let's say from Lowe's, and I'm getting all fighting bags, and I forget to turn my lights off, because yeah, I know there's trucks out there and cars out there that will automatically turn your lights off. Yeah, not mine. Okay, so I have to physically turn them off. And then got one of them little buzzers that says, hey Dip, you left your lights on, so I can get out and actually leave my lights on pretty easy. If I do that, when I get up the next morning, say to go down to Waffle House and have a breakfast once a week with some of my old Army buddies where we sit there and tell war stories and lie to each other. When I go out there and turn that key after leaving the lights on all night, do you think that battery is going to be strong enough to start that motor? No, it's not. Now what do? Well, I'm on land for one thing, so I can get out of the car. And in the old days, I used to go get me a pair of jumper cables. Well, I don't do that anymore. This is what I do now. This is a Genius Boost battery, 12 volt, 1000 amp, GB40. This is one of the little things you keep handy. And when there's cables in here and everything, you hook the cables up, hook them to your battery, turn the bad boy on, go start your car, good to go. All you need to do is remember to keep this thing charged up. So about once every month, month and a half, I'll bring it in, plug it into the wall, make sure she's all charged up. I also take this on the boat with me every time I go out as a backup. Even if I don't need it, maybe someone else will. Who knows? You help your other boaters out. So that's what we do nowadays. All right, we don't do the jumper cable stuff anymore. So the alternator is what's going to save me and keep me going. As long as I pay attention to the battery on my car, I'll be good to go. So how's that going to compare to the boat? Well, when I picked my boat up, okay, I came, brought it back to the house, backed it in where I got my pad built just for it, and started crawling all over it to find out. When I got on the boat and went aft and opened up the port seat, there's another tangent for you. Aft, A-F-T, newcomers. Aft means you're headed toward the back of the boat. The back of the boat is the stern. The front of the boat, or going fore or forward, that's the bow of the boat. So you got the bow at the front, stern at the back, you're headed aft, you're headed fore or forward. If you're standing in the middle, don't know which way to go, you're standing amidships, okay? If you're looking into your port side, that's your left. If you're looking to your right side, that's your starboard. Now, the easy way to remember that when you're first starting out, and you can't remember starboard and port and left and right, think about this. Port has 4 letters. Left has 4 letters, okay? So they match up. Starboard has more. Right has more than its opposites. Just remember that and you'll be good to go. All right, so I go back there and I open up the thing and I look down and I see this big conduit with a pile of wires coming out and I see 1 battery. Oh! Getting too old for this stuff. This is the battery that I see, and it says right here, it's a start battery. A start battery. You're going to basically run into, on your pontoon boat, you're probably going to run into about 3 different kinds of batteries you're going to deal with. One's going to be a start battery, one's going to be a dual purpose, dual, D-U-A-L, in case you can't understand my accent, dual purpose battery, and then this monster right here, which is a deep cycle battery. We'll talk about all of them. All right, so this is a start battery. It's a marine start battery. Car batteries and marine batteries should not be no, don't do that, okay? Car batteries working on a boat, not good. I know there's some of you old coots out there that's going to say, oh, I've used a car battery all my life. Well, God bless your heart. I'm happy for you. Not supposed to do that. These are specifically made to operate in a marine or a wet environment. All right, so this start battery's supposed to do one thing. Start the motor. Just like the one in the car, this one starts the motor, okay? Does it do extra stuff like the one in the car? It sure does. It runs the helm. And the helm is where all your gauges are, where most of your wires come in and everything for power and all that kind of good stuff. And you can do things differently. You're running up and down the lake, you got everything on you can think to have on, things you don't even need on. Are you worried about it? No, not really, because what? Boat battery, your boat motor has the same thing your car motor does. It has an alternator, okay? So, as long as that alternator, and again, as long as your electrical system's working, that alternator keeping this thing charged up to where it needs to be so that you can draw from it. But now, here's the difference between your boat and your vehicle. You don't really seldom, I've never done it, but I'm sure somebody out there will say, well, I do it. You know, you get out there, you just don't stop your car and just run everything and party like you do on a party boat, a pontoon boat, okay? So when I stop and I anchor down, I know I got the radio going, I've got phones plugged in so I can Bluetooth in and get my stuff off my Sirius XM and all that. I got a bunch of stuff going, okay? And then when it gets night, I'm turning on the LED lights underneath the gunnels. I'm turning on the LED lights inside the walkway there so people can see. And since I'm anchored, I got to have that anchor light on, all right? Now that's all the load. That's a negative load because we're not running up and down the lake. Engine's not running, okay? So, got a negative flow. How long will that last with this battery? Not gonna last a long time, I guarantee you that, because this is a start battery designed for one thing, start a motor, okay? So, it'll last a while, but eventually I'm gonna go over there and try and start it, boom, nothing. My boat motor's not gonna start, just like my truck motor didn't start, because I run down the battery. You can run these batteries down because that's not what they're designed for. What would I do? Same thing. I'm going to pull out my jumper, hook it up, jump it up, get it going, get the boat thing running, and head back to the dock. Okay. Now there's a battery that goes between this, a type of battery. There's a type of battery that goes between the start battery and this heavy duty deep cycle battery. I just didn't go out and buy one for the demo because don't need one right now. And that was called, you remember? The dual purpose battery. So right here should be sitting another battery called dual purpose. And where this one says start and where this one says deep cycle, it'll have dual purpose on that. Now, dual purpose battery is built just like it says. It's constructed to do two jobs. The cells, okay, the different lead cells, and assuming we're talking, okay, an acid battery, which this is, both of these are wet acid batteries. Okay, the dual purpose one, the cells are beefier and they are designed to provide power longer at a dead stop, so to speak. All right. So could I simply get rid of this and replace it with a dual purpose? Sure, I could. Would that save me a lot of time, trouble, and money? Yeah, sure it would. But I'm a long, I guess it's my old Army days, but I'm a long way out planner. I like to think the absolute worst. And if I can drain this bad boy down, I bet you I could probably drain down a dual purpose on a good party night. So I want a separate battery for starting, and I want a separate battery for the house. All right. So once again, I can't remember if we've been over it or not. Start battery is what's going to be called all the time. Start battery associated with the engine. This deep cycle, even though it's called a deep cycle battery, it will be referred to as its function, which is a house battery. It runs the house. It runs the helm and everything on the boat. So when you call up your mechanic and you say, I'm having a problem with one of my batteries, and he's going to go, probably, well, which one are you having a problem with? Your start battery or your house battery? Well, now you know what a house battery is. He's going to want to know, what's the load? Well, the load is, for example, my LED lights under the gunnels is 3.5 amps. My LED lights in the walkway is 3.5 amps. That's 7 amps. My anchor light, that's point something, but I'm going to round it off to 1 amp. Okay. My radio, that's a variable. My radio is a variable amp pull. By that I mean if I have it on a moderate volume, okay, where normal human beings might listen to it and understand what's going on, that's going to pull between 5 and 7 amps. If I jack that bad boy up, man, and we're doing some death metal, all right, now that bad boy is going to pull about 15 amps, and I don't know where that thing just fell. But I found it. Okay, so I just have to know what I'm pulling off that and let him know that, or her know that, because who knows who the mechanic is. So the point is, on the boat, it's important that you know what your amp ratings on all your different pieces of equipment are. And don't forget all those gauges up there. They take power to work, okay? So, boom, you need to, you got power running to them. How much power is that going to be? And it's all going to come off of this, or if you just have this, it's all going to come off of this, okay? So, when we start talking, now this bad boy, whew, I'm getting too old for this stuff for sure. This is the battery that my second battery that I'm going to put in, and this is a deep cell battery. This particular battery is designed for one thing and one thing only, to provide power for a long period of time. All right. When you go and buy a car battery, you generally walk in, let's say AutoZone or somewhere like that, and you go, hey, I need a battery. And they're going to go, well, what kind of battery do you need? And you go, hey, well, I've got a 19 whatever I'm driving. He pulls it up, says, oh, okay, you got this battery, this battery, this battery, this battery costs this much, and this much. And the reason the costs are different is basically on how strong is the battery. All right? And the reason he looks it up is, have you figured this out yet? Have you noticed one battery is bigger than the other? What's called group size. This is a group 24. This is a group 31. All right. So when I mount this battery in there, I have to have a group 31 battery box to mount. Okay. It won't fit in a 24. I have a 24 already for this thing. So I had to go out and buy one for this thing, all right? So this is a Group 31. There are tons and tons of groups out there. You can Google it and you can find them out in the whole 9 yards, all right? So when you buy a car battery, basically you're looking at cranking apps, cold cranking apps, these kinds of things. And here in North Carolina, our winters aren't that bad, so you don't need a heavy-duty cranking amp battery, although that's what I will usually buy, because I can't get out of the fact I used to live in Fairbanks, Alaska, at 60 below, and you need every cranking amp you can get because the cold will freeze your battery up, okay? So, boom. These things just don't want to stay on, do they? Okay, with your deep cycle battery, what you're going to be concerned with and what you want to ask about is the RC rating, Romeo Charlie. And for you Southern boys, that's not RC Cola. That stands for reserve capacity, all right? And it's right here on the battery. My battery that I got here says, okay, at 25 amp load, at a 25 amp load, this battery should at least last for 190 minutes. 190 minutes. So if I'm running my LED lights underneath at 3.5 amps, if I'm running my LED lights in the causeway, walkway at 3.5 amps, that's 7. If I'm running my radio at, let's say, 7 amps, okay, that's 14. I got my anchor light on, that's 15. Okay, I'm going to be well under 20 amps. So that means then this thing's going to last longer than 190 minutes, won't it? And what I'm going to do to keep track of that is, I really wanted to get a Victronic. A Victronic is a battery monitor. It's a brand of a battery monitor. But that bad boy came in at over $200. And I'm sorry, my pension ain't going to give me no daggum $200. So I got me a Drock. This is a Drock battery monitor. It's basically got a negative and a positive wire, okay? Obviously, positive wire goes to the red, negative goes. And what this bad boy will tell me is the percentage of battery that I have left, okay? And it's pretty accurate, and it's definitely accurate enough for a pontoon boat. Now, if I was out on the ocean and my life depended on the things, yeah, I'd probably spend, well, if I was out on the ocean, I wouldn't be worried about a $200, battery monitor, because that'd probably be the cheapest thing on the boat. So I've got me one of these, and right now I'm going to put it on this battery, and I've got one coming in the mail. I've decided I'm also going to cover this battery. So it's real simple. I know you can't see that, but it's a Drock battery, D-R-O-K. Made in China, aren't they all? I saw something the other day I thought was pretty funny. When Chinese tourists come here and go run into the shops and buy all that stuff, do they realize it's made in China? All right, so one other thing about this battery, we've talked about what they do as far as capabilities, long haul, and these things are kind of like used on what kind of things other than like to run a pontoon boat helm. You can run trolling motors. If you don't know what a trolling motor is next time you go out on the lake with your pontoon boat, look around for them small fishing boats, and at the front, normally at the front, mine's at the back because I never get up front. I'm not that stable and standing up. Okay, if you get up front, look up front, you'll see a little thing stick in a little motor. And it's a totally electric motor, and it allows the fisherman to follow along the shore very slowly, very quietly, without having to run that big motor in the back, scare the fish, waste gas. All right, so good to go. Long haul. So, but there's one other thing other than size, what it's for, that you need to think about and you need to keep in mind. Remember a little while ago I just said that this is a wet cell battery and this is a wet cell battery, right? All right, so it is. Now, there's two schools of thought. The first school of thought says don't mix batteries. If you're going to have your start battery to be a wet cell, then you want your house battery to be a wet cell as well. Don't make it a gel, don't make it an AGM, okay? Don't make it any other thing that's possibly out there. Some people say that don't matter, but here's why I say it matters personally. Different kinds of batteries have different kind of charging characteristics, all right? Here is a standard charger that I bought to charge my lawnmower. All right, at the beginning of every year, bring both the batteries in, hook them up one at a time, because this is a one bank charger. I can only charge one battery at a time off this thing because that's all the connectors it has, right? It's a one bank. When you start talking batteries, you're going to hear the term battery banks. How big is your battery bank? Well, it depends. A battery equals one bank. You got one battery, you have a one bank battery. You got two batteries, two bank batteries, three bank batteries, and on and on and on and on. All right, no big deal. And this is a two-stage charger. What you will want, in my opinion, is a good three-stage charger for these, and I'll get into that. But first, what's a two-stage charger? Basically, a two-stage charger does nothing but hit you heavy on with bulk charging. Bulk charging is high in amps and high in voltage, and then when the battery gets to a certain point, it clicks down to a float charge, all right, which is not as high amp, not as high voltage. So that's all two-stage. That's what that will do for you. This is a small two bank, because here's, okay, I got it all hooked up. You can charge two batteries at a time with this thing. I just got them tangled up, all right? And this is a three-stage. Now a three-stage starts off with bulk charging. Just about all of them start off with bulk charging. High voltage, high amperage. But in a certain stage, somewhere around 80%, and people argue that percentage, so, 80, 85, it doesn't matter. The point is, when it kicks in for the second stage, that's called the absorption charging stage. You got steady voltage, but you have less amps. And the reason for the less amps is overheating and damaging the battery, all right? And then finally the third stage will kick in at somewhere between 85 to 95%. Again, people argue the numbers, but let's just say for the sake of discussion, 95%. Then float stage kicks in. That's when you're going to have both the voltage and the amperage greatly decreased, and it floats out. Every now and then people will refer to that as a trickle charger. I'm going to tell you, make sure if you go out and buy a charger that you know exactly what you want, because I cannot tell you the number of times I've run into somebody who had a job but had no idea what they were selling in the way of batteries and or chargers. All right, you need a good three-stage charger. If you're going, and notice both the two-stage and this three-stage has got like the clip thing. All right, clips. To me, that's not very good over a long period of time. In other words, wintertime, when I go out and more or less winterize the boat, get everything done, and I hook my batteries up to my three-stage, my good three-stage charger, and let it take care of the batteries. That's when I employ this monster. This is the No-Code Gen 3. This is a Genius charger. And if you'll notice that the ends, let me find one of the ends here. The ends are different. You see how they got that little thing that goes over, and you actually lock it down with the bolt. Now this is designed to stay on all winter, and if the wind shakes your boat or something like that, or a mouse gets in there, it's not going to knock it off, all right? It's on there. So that is the kind of thing that I would recommend. I really like No-Code. They stand behind their stuff. Not an advertisement. They don't give me nothing. I would take one though. But, that's a good three-stage charger. There's also a four-stage charger which has bulk, absorption, float, but it adds something called equalization. And purists, battery charger purists will even say there's one more stage before equalization, and that's qualification. But that's more than you would ever need to know. Just go get you a three-stage charger and you will be happy, okay? You can get it online, whatever. Doesn't matter. But make sure that the charger you get goes with the batteries. For example, gel batteries don't like three-stage chargers. And the reason it doesn't like three-stage chargers is because sometimes three-stage chargers are called taper chargers. Taper. Okay, taper down. Starts off hot and heavy, lightens up a little bit, lightens up even more. Gels batteries, I understand, do not like that. They like constant amperage, constant power, okay? Until the point where they finally charge, then they go to float. So just make sure you know what you need and what you're going to do. All right, this is where I get hurt my back again. Oh, Lord. All right, let's look at some other stuff. Let's look at what we're going to have actually control our batteries and what this whole thing is about. And that is the BlueSeas Add A Battery system. And I got the one for 120 amps. They make one at 65 amps, which would have done my boat just fine. But like I said, I'm one of those guys, I look way out. I don't know what I'm going to be doing way out in the future, and I'd hate to have to buy something even more again and have to reinstall it or whatever. So I went with 120. The price was not that much different, so it really didn't matter. All right, let's see what's in here. First thing you're going to see in there is this switch. All right. Now you'll see some pictures of it here shortly. And by the way, I was out there doing some test shooting on the, trying to video putting the thing in, and neighbors kept coming up, drumming up the boat, knocking the camera over, didn't know I had a camera set up, was talking, hey, what are you doing? And it just didn't work, okay? So what I've decided to do, and the focus and zooming in and all that, so what I'm gonna do is just take a buttload of pictures. I'm gonna take a lot of pictures, put them in sequence, and do a voiceover, and it'll be just as good. Because then, instead of something like holding this up going, I know that isn't really close for you. I know you're having trouble seeing the four things on the back. Hopefully not, I don't know. But the point is, with pictures, I can take a bunch of pictures and make sure it's nice and clear. But this is the switch that comes with the Add A Battery system. It's 3 positions: off, on, both batteries. Okay? Off is just like it sounds like. You have both batteries hooked up to this. Power in the on position goes from start battery to the engine, from the house battery to the helm. You put it in the off position, stopped right here. No power going out. It's okay, that's cool. See, yeah, there's no drain on your battery if you got some things that are drains. For example, I have an RF, radio frequency module, that allows me to turn my interior LED lights on with a remote. Don't really need it, but that's how it came, so I put it in that way. That RF receiver is a constant drain. Not much, but over the winter time, enough to kill a battery. All right, so what I did was I ended up putting it on a switch, an internal switch. But if I have this now, all I gotta do is put this in the OFF position for the winter time and not worry about any kind of, power going out. It's all going to stay right here. When I turn this thing on, that's called normal on, that's what I call it. This battery, starter battery, can see the engine. House battery can see the helm. Start battery can only see the engine, can't see the helm. House battery can only see the helm, can't see the engine. All right, so that's the way it works. If I put it to both batteries, start battery can see the engine and the helm. House battery can see the helm and the engine and help in doing whatever needs to be done. All right, you don't want to leave it there. Not good. That's where you want to leave it in the normal on position or off. Obviously off, you're not going to start your motor or do anything like that. And if you're sitting anchored, you can't put it in the off position because then you're not going to get any power to your helm, so you can't run your radio, your lights, or anything like that. So, during normal operation, it's going to be in the normal on position. All right. On the back, now, there's 2 other things that came with this kit. One is the ACR we're going to talk about, and the other one, probably the most important one, are the instructions. What? Real men don't read instructions? Well, real men might not read instructions, but real boaters do. Let me tell you, there is a lot of good information on these, all right? And on the little slip, packing slip that came with it, lots of good information on there. Know it backwards and forwards before you get started. Now, what I did was, because if I hold it this way, it's hard to tell the difference, isn't it? Yeah. If I hold it this way, it's hard to tell the difference, isn't it? But the problem with that is, this thing here is for the house battery. And if I put it up here, hold it like that, and think that's the house battery and hook it up, no, I just hooked it to the start battery position. So what I have done was taken my labeler, got this in the right position, and I labeled it so that when I'm out there working and trying to twist around, I don't hook the wrong cable to the wrong, position or anything like that. And what I will do is, these are my battery cables that I had made, okay, measured out what I needed, and if you'll notice, they are labeled on each end, okay? So I will hook up the battery cable before I ever mount it as much as possible, all right? Because it just makes it so much easier, because there's no way once I hook this up am I going to get this on there and get a wrench in there without teaching the neighbors a whole bunch of new Army cuss words. All right, so hook it up ahead of time and then good to go. So what I've labeled is the load and the engine. And both batteries are down here. House battery, start battery. Okay? Real simple. So that's all you need to do with your switch. Of course, you got to mount it. Now here's the brains of the whole thing. This is the ACR, or the automatic charger relay. This is where I break a fingernail. And if you notice on the inside, there are 2 lugs. Okay? Now what's interesting is, I'm not sure why they do this, but instead of going A and B like any normal American human being would do, they went A, B backwards. So either the guy's dyslexic or he's never mind. I get myself in trouble. Okay, so here's A, here's B. A is for your start battery, B is for your house battery. How do I know? The instructions tell me so, okay? Right here, which you cannot see, I've got trouble seeing it, holding it right in front of my eyes. There's a little LED light, okay? And that LED light blinks, and here's the code, decoder right there. It tells me if it's on, just on, that the batteries are combined and they're both charging. If it's off, they're isolated and they're discharging, all right? And so on and so on and so on. So there's a code here. What I'll end up doing is writing this down on a piece of paper, taping it up so it won't get wet, and I'll have it somewhere near the helm. All right, no big deal. So not only do you have the A and the B where your battery cables get hooked to, just like that, and put them, lock them down. Underneath, there are 3 connections. Now I'm not going to go into deep with this because I do when you see the wiring diagram, I go into great detail. Bottom line is, first one's a ground. You got to use it. You got to use it. And in fact, yeah, they're strong. In fact, you got to make up a ground wire. All right. In that ground wire, you have to have a 1 amp inline fuse. All right. So on one end, you've got a female connector, so it can slide over the male connector. Come on, get on there. Okay, it's not too tight, it might fall off. And on the other end, you have one of those ring connectors that will basically just, go over the battery on the negative side. Actually, it doesn't go over the battery. I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry. It's going to go on the negative bus bar. I say again, the negative bus bar. It's just because I saw this and I saw the battery sitting there. Tough getting old, I'm telling you. So you must have that. You must have that, and you have to make that because you can't buy them anywhere. No big deal. The one in the middle is the interrupt. Basically makes it cause when you bump it and you have to splice that into your wire on your starter for your engine. It opens up a circuit in there and makes sure that both batteries are isolated from the starting process. And the wire on the side here, you definitely want to run the last one because that extends your LED light, because you're not going to be able to see this. I'm not going to be able to see this when I've got my seat down and 12 grandkids sitting on top of it and towels and all that stuff, So I'll run that, and what I will do is run it to an LED light. Yeah. Now here's like a little $5 LED light. Small, don't need to be big, no big deal. Positive, negative, there you go. There you go. Now, if you know anything about circuitry, you'll know you only need to run, you only got one wire here. So your thought goes, well, I got two wires here. You only got one wire here. Where does that hook? That hooks to the positive side. Okay? That hooks to the positive side. This black wire you take and you hook it to anywhere on your negative, anywhere that you can ground it out. I'll take it down and I'll put it on that 12 volt fuse bus I've installed in the boat from BlueSeas, because I wanted to be able to control some things just the way I had it, considering I really don't like their wiring in the boat. So sometimes you're only going to use one wire from something. In the negative, as long as you just ground it off to the common ground, you're good to go. Not a problem. Most of the time, about 99%. All right, so that's what we got there. No big deal. All right? Big thing is, read the instructions. Now, you gotta understand something about this. Well, you don't gotta understand it, but it's nice if you do. This is what it makes the batteries get charged, okay? Not this. This just controls where your power goes. This is what says, hey, one of your batteries is going down. We need to charge it up. And this is a parallel charger. Let me say that again. A parallel charger. And you're sitting there going, okay, it's a parallel charger. What in Sam Hill's a parallel charger? Let's say my house battery got down, which it will if we sit there for 4 or 5 hours up to 9, 10 o'clock at night partying. You better believe that's going to go down. When it comes time to crank back up and we take off, this thing's going to start getting readings because it doesn't do anything when you're sitting still. All right, but when it's going, the two battery connections are going to go, and it'll sense that, hey, this battery's down and needs charging, and what it will do is say, hey, alternator, let's put some power. I'm going to put some power to the house battery, and it says, hey, star battery, your brother over here needs some charging. I'm going to take some of you. And it takes the charge from the alternator and some of the battery charge from the start battery and puts it over here in the house. Same thing if the start battery was weak. It'll go, hey, alternator, hey, house battery, brother over there needs some power. And it takes power from both, but it brings them both back up and keeps them both at good operating level. That's a parallel charger. It does not say, I'm just going to charge you. Don't you guys worry about it. I'm just going to divert power to this battery. No. It brings everything in. That gives you a faster charge, by the way. So it's not a bad thing. It just gives you a faster charge. Even if this thing dead, it's not going to kill this battery. It doesn't work that way. All right, so that's a parallel charger. Now, one thing BlueSeas is very, very adamant about. Oh, good Lord. Is let's use one of these. I'm going to take it out of the box here, so don't worry. I wish I could zoom in on that. I don't have that capability. Anyway, this thing ain't cheap. And I'll be honest with you, I have not found anybody that uses it. But if there's anything I can say about BlueSeas reps, the two guys that you call up there, I know one of them's named Kevin, I don't remember the other guy's name, I'm sorry. I got a yellow sticky on my headboard reminding me what my old lady's name is so I don't yell the wrong name at the wrong time. I'm not good with names, I'm really not. Kevin is very adamant saying you really need this to isolate the wire going from the house battery and the start battery to the ACR. Because remember, which if you weren't catching it, on the switch there was a place to hook a house battery and a start battery wire. Well, there's a place on here to put the house battery. So that means there's two wires, right, coming out of this thing here. One's going to go to the ACR. One's going to go to the switch. All right. The one going to the ACR needs to be totally isolated. And here's what we mean by isolated, and here's how we do it. All right. Okay, good. Lay the thing down. Where did I lose it at? Ah, here it is. Okay. Getting old is not for the weak at mind or weak at heart, trust me. This is a special mount. Notice a little bar that comes off the side. That little bar goes over the negative post. Then the wire that you want to go to the switch goes over the top of that post. And then you put your nut on and lock them down nice and tight with this going where it needs to go. You then take this fuse. Isn't that a wild looking fuse? Okay, got a little square with a hole in it. And it only fits on one way, so you can't get it on wrong. You try to put it this way, not going to go down. That goes on there. The cable going to the ACR goes there. Put your nut and your bolt on it. And these are isolated. If this should overheat or have any problems whatsoever, that fuse will blow. And there's a chart on here that tells you what size fuse to use. Or you can do like I did, because I called, like I said, I called Kevin again. This was about my 16th phone call to Kevin. We became good friends. We decided that based on my alternator, and what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, I can get by with a 60 amp fuse fine. I don't need a 100 amp fuse on this daggum thing or a 120 amp fuse. 60 amps will work just fine, all right? Not cheap, but I tell you what, I bought one for each side, each battery, and I bought a spare fuse. I believe the spares, all right? If I get out there, for some reason I'm blowing fuses left and right, and I can't figure out why, you bet. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to unhook that bad boy because I got a toolbox with me, and I'm going to put it direct and see what happens. You got a choice to get off the water, all right? So there we go. Breaking down on the water is not like breaking down on land. You can get out of your car, you can walk around, you can cuss and scream or whatever. When you break down on water and you open that door and you walk out that boat, I hope you got your PFD on, your life jacket, because you just fell in the lake. So be careful about that. All right, there we go. Let's get this out of the way. What else we got up here? You're going to hear me talk about ears on one of the other segments. In case you've never seen them, this is a set of ears. This is a set for my small 30 horsepower Tohatsu. Don't like them. Don't like them. They didn't work real well. And I tell you, I bought a nice set of ears for my DF-150, my Susie. Can't get it to work. So I tried controlling the water. It still didn't work. So you need to figure out what's going on. And what I ended up doing is just building a trough. And I just dumped the motor in, fill it up with water, good to go. Now all this stuff has to be mounted, right? And you're going to mount it on a bulkhead, all right? Definition time again. What's a bulkhead? Simply put, it's a wall. But when I lift up my seat and I look down, I don't have any kind of wall to drill holes into to mount these things. All I got is the front where your feet go, and I'm certainly not drilling there. And I got the metal skin that goes around the outside, and I'm certainly not drilling there. So, being a woodworker too, I made me a bulkhead, all right? This is my bulkhead. I'll put 4 screws in. Once I get everything dry fitted, I'll drop me 4 screws in, lock this bad boy down. This thing will be mounted up here, okay? And if you're wondering what that hole is on the side for right there, that's where I can bring the engine cable out through and bring it around versus bringing it over the fuse bus. This is my negative fuse bus right here. All right, that's my negative fuse, but everything, all my negatives will be hooked to that bad boy. You'll see those when you watch the other thing, the wiring diagram. And this bad boy gets hooked down here. So I had to make my own bulkhead, and this is really good South African hardwood. I mean, this stuff is hard. It does not mind water all day, even though I polyurethane the dickens out of it. All right, so we got that. Now, in the front, when we started this thing off in the talking part, remember I said I wasn't going to show you pulling cables. because it's a 22-foot run. Yeah, this battery and the helm are only 7 foot apart, but you can't run cables over the floor or anything like that. And my boat has undercladding. All right, it has metal. All right, so no way in the world I'm drilling holes in that just to get a 7-foot cable run. No, 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 no. So I put up all the other cables in through the conduit and everything like that. But before I ran those cables, and anytime I make something, you know, like when I make this thing right here, you know, this negative cable for the ACR, I tested out with my multimeter. There's all kinds of multimeters out there, newcomers. All right, there's the old digital, old analog with the needles. Don't waste your time. They're okay, but don't waste your time. Get yourself a good digital one. And there's a feature on some, it's not on others, and I don't know why. This is one of 3 digital multimeters that I have, and on 2 of them, it does not have a continuity position to check continuity. What's continuity? Hey, real simple. Let's say this cable was 22 foot long. I guarantee you I'm not running a 22 foot long cable, cussing, getting my hands all cut up like I always do on that aluminum out there without making sure it's a good cable. Can you buy a cable or a wire and it's not good, brand new? Oh, you bet you can. I don't want to tell you how many times I've had that happen. All right, so what I'll do is I will take my multimeter, put it in the continuity check position, take one lead, hold it on one side, take the other lead, right? Ain't this fun? And hold it on the other side, and I get a very, very slight beep. I can barely hear it in my old ears because I've had too many guns and explosions go off. But my other half says she can't hear it either hardly, so you got to pay real attention. What that's telling me is that cable, or that length of wire, has the capability of successfully running a current all the way down. All right, so cool. I'm going to check it before I pull it. I'm going to check it after I pull it to make sure it hasn't grounded out. And I'm going to check it when I put the connectors on the end if I haven't already put them on before I pulled it. Get one of these. They're not expensive. Even with the, just make sure it's got the continuity function. I think I paid $35 for this one. I mean, this is unreal. I can remember when these things first came out. I can remember when the first 4-function calculator came out. They were locked up in cages, and they were like over $100 for the, oh yeah. That's like teacher says, you'll never have a calculator with you all the time. I fooled you, didn't you? Yeah, I do have a calculator with me. Have a camera with me, have a calendar with me. It's on the phone. Yeah, okay. So, what else we got? I think that's it. Switch. You're going to hook a battery from each battery to it. You're going to put a cable from each battery to it. Then you're going to put the load. The load is anything that's taking power. All right. You're going to put the engine cable through it. You're going to put a battery cable connection to this from each battery. So that means from each battery you're going to have 2 positive cables coming off, and you're going to have 1 ground going to the bus bar, okay, on my own wall that I built. I'm going to isolate the positive because they say you really ought to do it. I'm going to do that just to make them happy. We'll see what goes on. I think that about covers it up. I know we talked a whole lot about batteries, and I know we talked about a whole lot of stuff other than just how to hook this stuff up. But that was the idea. When I looked at the videos that were out there, they left off a lot of steps. They really did. And I just wanted to make sure that you saw these steps and you saw some of the things you need to deal with. For example, to maintain your batteries, get yourself a good 3-stage charger, a smart charger, 3-stage. All right, and unless, of course, you have a gel battery, then you're going to get a different style. So check with your batteries and do your research so that when you go in and talk to the guy, he doesn't think you're coming and you can tell whether he knows something or not. There's the difference going walking in and go, I need a boat battery. Oh yeah, well, what for? Versus going in, I need a house battery, deep cell cycle, 2-poster, and I want it to be lead acid. Well, he knows 2-poster. Deep cell cycle, lead acid. The guy knows I know what I'm talking about, and he's not going to try as much with me as he might with someone who just walks in and goes, I need a battery. There's a big difference there. Don't assume they know what they're talking about, because they don't always do. All right, enough of that stuff, because this is getting too long. At this point, we're going to go out. I'm going to start hooking stuff up. I got to move these batteries. Don't tell the old lady I had them on the table. And I'm going to do a lot of pictures. Do a lot of pictures. I'm not going to try and film it, because I don't want the neighbors coming over, knocking the camera over again, or anything else. It'll come out good, or as good as it could have been anyway, maybe better. I do know that the volume and the speak thing from me talking on the camera versus doing a voiceover with the microphone is completely different. Sorry about that. No Academy Awards. If you're on the same pontoon pages that I am on Facebook, and you have comments, hey, put them on the pontoon page. Don't put them on the YouTube page, because I probably won't go back and check that much. I don't care. I just want to put some stuff out, and I'll be putting this the link to this thing on all of the 3 pontoon groups that I'm a member of. All right. Appreciate you taking the time to watch it. We got a lot more still left to do. Bye. Alright, sorry about that, but I forgot something that kind of important, I think. At least it's good to know, even if it's not important, but I do think this is something I'd like to pass on. I've mentioned that these are lead acid batteries, and they will work fine in a pontoon boat. Alright? Pontoon boats are stable. Your pontoon boat is not going to be doing this, right? You hope not. Okay? So you're going to get away with a lead acid battery, no problem whatsoever. And the good news is they're one of the least expensive batteries out there, and they will do you a fine job. There are other types of batteries out there. You heard me mention a gel battery. There's gel batteries, and they cost a little bit more. Some people say they're better batteries, and they might be, probably are. They do have different charging characteristics than a wet cell. You know, nothing complicated, and they may require a different kind of charger than what you would normally get for your wet cell batteries. You can't use a standard three-stage charger on it, I'm told. Okay, I've never owned a gel battery. Let me tell you that. Never have. Always use these in my boats. Why are there different kinds of batteries to start with? Being wet cell, just like they talk about, if we pop the tops off of these and turn them over, battery acid's going to leak out all over the place, and it's a mess. You don't want battery acid leaking out. It is an acid, a low-grade acid, but it will still mess you up, and it will mess up your battery box and everything what's going on your boat. Great for pontoon boats, not good for sailboats. And you're probably sitting there, some of you going, why do I need a battery on a sailboat? Because just about every sailboat has some kind of motor. And if it definitely going to have a bunch of electronics. You don't get out on the ocean without having electronics, believe me. You may have an identification system, you may have radar, you're going to have a GPS, you're going to have a depth finder. There's all kinds of electronics that you're going to have on there. And their battery banks are pretty good size, okay? Gel batteries are fine for that, because let's say you're in a Vanderstadt 36-footer steel. All right, what's a Vanderstadt 36-footer steel? Vanderstadt's the guy that designed the boat. 36 foot is how long it is, and steel is what the hull is made from. It's not made from fiberglass, and it's not made from wood. It's made from steel. They're the turtles of the ocean, okay? They're very slow because they weigh a ton. If you're running, if you got 22 knot winds, okay, and you got a full spinnaker, and a knot, by the way, is about 1.15 miles per hour. I'm sorry, about 1.5 miles, about a mile and a half hour, no big deal. Point is, if you're running 22 knot winds and you've got your big spinnaker out there, which is the one in the front, looks like half a Dolly Parton's bra, and you're running a full 130 mainsail. What's a 130 mainsail? It means it's a 30% larger than a normal size for that particular style boat. So you're running a full 130 and it's tight, man, and you're trucking. You are trucking. You might be at a pretty good lean. You do not want an acid battery leaning. No, 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 no. They're going to leak on you. Over a period of time, they will leak. And if you hit into a bunch of rollers, what's rollers? Rollers are ways that make your boat lean way over to the starboard, lean way over to the port, lean way over to the starboard, lean way over to the port, so you can get rid of launch. All right, rollers aren't fun. Not a good battery for that. Gel batteries are good for that. The easiest way, and it's not a perfect example, but work with me here. If you took a jar of Vaseline petroleum jelly and hung it upside down, that's a gel battery for you, okay? There's another one called AGM. That's absorbed glass mat. An absorbed glass mat is just like it sounds like, okay? It's mats of you know, just a style of battery. Then you have your ultimate king and queen of the batteries. You've got your lithium. Lithium batteries are, oh man, they're the top of the line, but they are also the death of the wallet. I know a guy that put in a 4-bank system, 4 batteries. Now, when you buy lithium, you just don't buy the battery. You just don't buy the battery. You got to buy all the electronics to support it. 4-bank battery for this guy, with all the electronics to support it, took a $12,000 bill. $12,000. I think I paid like 100. What did I think? 130 for this. Okay, so. Lithium is some serious, when you're buying lithium batteries, you're getting in some serious battery stuff. And what do they do out on the ocean to keep their batteries up and running? They don't count on alternators. Why? Because they hope to be sailing. It's a sailboat. Is the motor running? No. Therefore, they're counting on what? Go down to some docks nowadays and look at some sailboats, and I'll bet you'll see a bunch of them out there that's got solar panels. And if they don't have solar panels, or some do have solar panels, they also got this thing on the back, looks like a little prop airplane, you know, things. That's a wind generator. So the smart guy has both the wind generator and the solar panel. Solar panel for when it's a sunny day but no wind. Prop generator for the days that it's cloudy but lots of wind. That way you can keep your batteries charged up. All right, now there's one coming. And it's not really a brand new battery style, but it's coming up. It's an up-and-comer, and it's called a foam, F-O-A-M, foam battery. I spell things from time to time because I got a weird accent, I know. A foam battery, all right? And Firefly makes a great little foam battery, and a fraction of the cost of lithium. However, it's got all the pluses that a lithium has, and a few that they don't, in the way, for example, the cost. And the fact that you don't have to have all that electronic support equipment to take care of your batteries. Now they say if you take care of your lithium batteries, they'll last longer than your boat. Well, okay. Odds of somebody doing that's probably not all that good, so there it is. But you cannot take one of these batteries and have it rocking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's not what a wet cell is for. This is a fine battery for a pontoon boat. I'm going to say it one more time. It's not a fine battery for a sailboat or something out there. You could probably get away with it on a catamaran, but they still won't use them on a cat. And a catamaran, in case you're not familiar, it's got the 2 big holes in the thing and like the wedge, and it's pretty stable, but most people still don't like them. There's not a lot of, I don't know very many sailors that like I tell you, one of them days, ain't it? Just one of them days. A lot of sailors they just don't like dealing with wet cell batteries. They want gel, AGM, or lithium is their dream. But now they're getting into Firefly, foams, and everything like that. I just thought I'd add that so that you would understand that there's different kinds of batteries out there. And this little bad boy right here, okay, your ACR. Your charging characteristics. Remember we were talking about mixing, maybe having a lead acid for my start battery. And yeah, hey sports fans, I know that says cranking. that says cranking, and I've been calling it a start battery and doing this. This is a start battery. Cranking a battery, start battery, same thing. All right, don't worry about it. Deep cycle. Both wet cell. Charging characteristics, exactly the same. This thing doesn't have to get confused, because if you put a gel battery on here, if this was a gel battery, if my house battery was a gel battery, and my start battery was a acid battery, charging characteristics are different. Going to confuse this little thing. You don't want to do that. All right. This is not $1 million piece of equipment. Like I said, I think the whole thing was like 135, something like that. It's not $1 million NASA piece of equipment. So I would highly recommend that you decide what type of battery you want and then match them both up. Don't mix them. But that's your different batteries out there. That's why they came about and all that kind of neat stuff, I think. And it'll give you an idea of how they look. If you ever get a chance to go on a sailboat, you know, or if you're out there and you ask a guy, you know, can I see your battery bank? I just learned a lot about batteries, and a lot of sailors are pretty cool. A lot of people that sail, they're really neat, and yeah, sure, come on down, I'll be glad to show it to you, you know, and they'll show you the banks and everything like that. They've got lithium. You can see all the electronics that you have to keep a lithium bank cooking correctly, and they'll probably explain, you know, if you ask them to, they'll explain how their solar panels work and how their wind generator works and all that kind of neat stuff. All right, I just didn't want to leave that out because I don't know how come I forgot it during when I started this thing off to start with, but I just want to make sure you knew about the different kind of batteries. Their charging characteristics are different, that you may need different chargers for them. I know we've already established that, but you can get by with a wet cell real fine. If money, you know, if you just bought a real super expensive boat and you're going to eat beans for the next few months, you can get by with a house battery that's wet cell, no problem at all. All right, now we're done. Let's go turn some wrenches. Okay, here's my wiring diagram. This wiring diagram is going to do two things for me. One, it's going to keep me straight on what gets hooked where. That way I won't take a cable and hook it to the wrong lug and maybe cause a short or damage a battery or hurt something. And we don't want that to happen. So it's a nice little roadmap for me. If you're new at this, I really suggest you come up with a wiring diagram that you can follow. I've been doing wiring for a long time, and I still come up with a wiring diagram so that it will help me out. Some of you old salts out there are shaking your heads going, yeah, that's a good idea. Some of you are going, no, I don't need no dang wiring diagram. Well, bless your heart. I'm happy for you. I do need one. I like them. And another thing it's going to do for me is tell me what I need to get, and I'll explain that at the end. All right, let's take a look at the major components that are here on the diagram. First of all, we have our switch. That's that big red thing that I showed you that's got 3 positions, off, on, and both batteries. There's 4 lugs on the back side. I showed you that down when we did the talking head. There's a load lug and a house battery lug. House batteries take care of the loads. There's an engine lug and a start battery lug. The start battery always talk to the engine, okay? In the normal on position, the start battery always talks to the engine, never talks to the load. House battery always talks to the load. House battery never talks to the engine in the normal on position. If you switch it to both batteries, then both of these batteries can see both things. The start battery can see the load and it can see the engine and so forth. All right, let's take a look at the auto charge relay. It has 2 positions, A and B lug. Now, I'm following just about connection for connection. I'm following the BlueSeas diagram, all right? I'm doing this because there's different ways you can hook this up, but I'm going to go ahead and follow their diagram. So if for some reason I have to call them and go, hey, I'm having a problem, and they're going to want to know what's hooked where, and I'm going to say, hey, I followed your diagram. Went right along with it. The only difference is la la la, and there ain't going to be hardly any differences. So here on your auto charge relay, okay, the ACR, it's got 2 battery connections. But there's your ACR.
Down here, I've got my start battery. When you say start battery, like I said, always start battery, think engine, think start battery. They marry up with each other. House battery. When you talk about house battery, think about load. Think about load, think about house battery. They marry up to each other. So, the only other thing I got left on here as far as a piece of a component goes is the negative bus bar. It's got 4 positions where I can put my negative cables. So let's talk about what we're going to hook where and what we have coming in. One, I have and we're going to do the positive side first. One, I have a boat helm cable coming in, and I'm going to hook that to the load on the switch, load lug. What's a boat helm cable? I call it the boat helm cable only because that's the one that came with the boat when I bought it. All right, it is not something I have installed. That's the boat helm cable coming in from the helm to the battery that it came with, which was a start battery only, and that's where it pulls its power and gets its power from for everything that's on the helm. Now, right below that, you'll see my helm cable. All right. What is my helm cable? That is a cable that I, after having got the boat, wanted to do some different things, and I ran my own cable. It's a 4-aught cable that goes from the battery box, hooked to the battery, into the helm, and it's hooked to a 12-position fuse block that I got from BlueSeas. Because there's things that I wanted to put on there that I wanted to make sure I understood how they were wired up. Because when you look at when you get down and you lay on your back and you get into the helm and you look at all that wire that they got in there, I don't know about your boat, but my boat looks like somebody took a bucket full of wire, threw a hand grenade in there, and that's how it got wired. I am not impressed with the wirings, the way they did the wiring. So I put me a 12 position fuse block in there so that I can bring things in. Like I've already brought in LED lights for the walkway. I've brought in LED lights that go under the gunnels. I've moved my sole GPS to my fuse block. I've moved my GPS / depth finder to the fuse block, and these kinds of things, and I can control them. All right, I'm happier with it there. I can control the fuse. I can control how it's hooked up, the whole 9 yards. So that's what my helm cable did. That's where it goes and all this kind of stuff. All right, so we got an engine cable coming in. This is coming out of a piece of conduit that goes into the battery block. Big red cable. I know it's the engine cable. Traced it down. It's going to hook to the engine lug on the switch. And down here, there's going to be the 2 batteries. Their house battery will have a cable that goes down to the positive side of the house battery, and the start cable will have a cable. The start battery will have a cable that goes down to the start battery. There you go. House battery, start battery, cables down to the positive sides. Now, over here on your auto charge relay, you also have 2 lugs, and they're going to take a power cable from each battery. So the start battery will have a power cable that comes up, and according to the BlueSeas diagram, they have the start battery on A. Fine, it'll work. And they got the house battery coming up to B, and that's where I put it. Now, underneath the start battery, there's 3 male prongs that you can use, and you're going to have to use at least one of them, minimum of one of them, and that is the ground. You got to ground this thing. So there's a ground that comes off, and it goes to the negative bus bar, and there needs to be an inline fuse for that, and the fuse needs to be at a 1 amp. So you need to get a 1 amp inline fuse. Okay, cut your wire it in, and then take it over to your negative bus. Now, this sender connection, this has been the one that has caused me more problems in trying to find out what does it do, why do I need it, because it's labeled optional to start with. And it's called the ignition switch start isolation connection. When we talk about the switch this time, we're talking about the ignition switch, where you put your key in, turn, and start your motor. This wire goes from this sender connection, all right, you fish it around, get it up into the helm, you pull the ignition switch, and you got to find the start wire. The start wire works like this. There's no power that can be read off of it when the switch is off. When you turn the switch key, power will go over that wire and down to the starter. And when once your motor starts up, what do? You release the key, right? Okay, so when you release the key, there's no more power to that wire again. So what I have to do is hook a multimeter up to the ground and then go in there and find the wire. I'm told it's either going to be the brown wire or the white wire with an orange. I don't know. I got to find out. So I'm going to go in there, find it, and I'll video this so you can watch the processes if you can't find out which yours is either. Okay, so I'll hold the multimeter to start with the brown wire, flip the switch, and see what happens. If I get a quick reading of energy, 12 volts plus going through, and when I release, that 12 volts goes back to 0, I found it. All right, no big problem. But newcomers, here's something very important. I hope the guy that sold you your boat tells you this. You never ever run your boat motor and it's not in water. All right, if you're not on a lake, if you don't have ears hooked up to it, which I don't like, or you don't have it in a trough, which I do like, don't ever run your motor because that's how it's cooled. You have two intakes down at the bottom, and water is sucked up into your boat motor through your impaler, and it runs it around through there through a system and cools your motor off and goes out the pee hole. Every time I got the grandkids and I crank up the motor, I say, hey, go check the pee hole, make sure we're working. And they just crack up. They love it. Oh, Granddaddy got a pee hole. Well, yeah, Granddaddy does. Okay, so parents love it too, And so they'll go check. Yep, it's peeing, Daddy. Your motor's peeing. And I go, great. Okay, sounds good. And you're good to go. Now, ears don't seem to work for some reason on my Suzuki DF-150. I have actually built a trough, and I bring the motor up, get the trough underneath it, drop the motor down into it, fill it up with water, and that's what I do. All right, point is, don't run it without it. So what happens is that when you hook this wire up to that ignition switch, when you hit it and you bump that power through there, now normally these things will run isolated, normally. Especially in the on position, they are normally isolated, meaning start talks to motor, house talks to load. But what it will do is it will cause the switch in this to open up to ensure that there's no way in the world that there's any power coming from the house battery to help start the motor at this point. So it will isolate the house battery from the starting process. And the reason that they do that is apparently some people have experienced when these things first came out that they have experienced when they started it dropped the battery so low that things like their radio would turn off or reboot, their GPSs and their depth finders would reboot, these kinds of things. Well, I sat down and thought about this, and the thought that went through my mind was, okay, when I start the motor, I don't usually have anything on. I will pull into to the launch area, pull over to the prep area, get everything on the boat that I want to get on and everything like that. But I don't turn on my GPS backup. I don't turn on my GPS depth finder. I don't turn on my radio. I don't turn on anything. Okay. And I've never launched at night. So if I did that, probably the only thing I'd put on would be my nav lights or my anchor light, just so it could be seen. Okay, but then I pull it in, back it in. I'll get it backed up, get it into the water, turn the engine on, back it up off, and I've already got my fenders out. I'll take it to the dock, tie it off to the dock, get out, go get the truck, park the truck, get back to the boat, get it away from the dock so somebody else can be in there launching. And I'll sit out in the no wake zone or whatever, let the engine warm up while it's idling. And then I will turn everything on. While I'm waiting for the GPSs to find the satellites and lock in, I'll go ahead and probably go back and take the cover off, the bimini cover. I may even put it up, depending upon how hot a day it is. But initially, I probably won't, but I'll go ahead and take the cover off anyway. And make sure everything's stowed and everything's good to go. By then, the GPSs are good, and I'll go ahead and turn on the radio, and off we go. So if I stop somewhere, I'll probably leave the radio on, but I will not leave my GPSs on. I don't need that power. That's just a drain. So the radio is probably the only thing I'll have on, unless it's night, and then we all know by law you have to have your anchor light on. If you're moving, you got to have your nav lights on. So you follow the rules, you follow the laws, you're good to go as far as lights go. But since I've had just a start battery and haven't put this in yet, since I've had just a start battery, I've had no problem starting with my GPS is on. I've had no problem starting with my radio on. Nothing's dropped down, whatever. So I am going to not use this. I am not going to use this. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to put the connector on the end of a piece of 10 gauge wire, put the connector at this end of a 10 gauge wire that I need, and I'm going to run it. But I'm not going to hook it up. I'm going to have it there so that if I do experience some kind of problem now because I've installed all this, then I've got it already and I don't have to worry about running it again. Because I am going to run this LED extension so I can see the light. There's a little LED light. Remember I showed you that during the talking head. And it tells you what's going on based on the way it's flashing or not flashing, or constant. I want to use that. So when I run this cable, I'll go ahead and run this wire. I'll run this wire as well. I'll just let this hang. You do not want to hook this wire up. BlueSeas is really adamant about that. They say do not hook that up with a length of wire on there that's not connected. The reason being, that length of wire makes it look like there's a short inside. All right, the circuitry thinks, oh wow, we got a short, and it's going to start giving you false readings, and you don't want to do that. So we got all our connection here to the switch. We've got all our connections here to the auto charge relay. I showed you how this 60 amp fuse is going to hook up when we did the talking head down. Okay, and by talking with BlueSeas and telling them about my alternator, what it does, how much it is, and everything else, we've determined that a 60 amp MRBF fuse will work fine, and that will isolate this wire. All right, no big deal. So that's all the positive stuff going on. What do we got negative-wise? Well, we've already talked about the negative cable coming off the auto charge relay that requires a 1 amp inline fuse. We also have a negative cable coming from the boat helm cable, completes that circuit. We have a engine ground, which comes along with the engine cable, completes that circuit. All right. I've got my own helm negative cable, completes my helm cable circuit. And then I'm going to need to connect from each battery over here as well. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negative cables going into a 4-position negative bus. No problem. Stack them. You can do that. No problem. All right. So then this is going to not only tell me how to hook things up, where to hook things up, it's going to tell me what I need. You see the GOTs here? GOT. That's not an electronic name. That's not Game of Thrones. That tells me, I got that cable, I got that cable, I got that cable, and so on. If I don't see that, then that means, guess what? I ain't got that cable. I have to go buy. So, negatives, I need a negative battery cable to go from the house battery here. I need a negative cable to go from the start battery to the bus as well. Positive-wise, I need a cable to go from the house battery to the ACR, one from the start battery to the ACR, one from the house battery to the switch, and one from the start battery to the switch. So I need 6 cables. I need 2 blacks, 4 reds, and I'll measure and make sure I get the right lengths. You see the word controller here. I don't know if it's in focus or not. I'm sorry. You know, all my cameras are like me on their last leg. But you see the word controller, and that's sometimes what I will slip and call the ACR, the auto charge relay, only because it controls how the batteries are being done. All right, and it says 16 gauge. That is the absolute minimum. I've already purchased a 100-foot reel of 10 gauge to do this wire and these 2 wires. So I've got 10 gauge that I'm going to do with that. So here is my diagram telling me what is hooked to where. I'll make sure that before I ever go out there, I have all these cables labeled at each end so I know where they go. And I know which ones I need to go buy, and we're good to go. It's just a question of putting them all together and testing it out. Once I have everything hooked up, the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, is take the switch and put the switch in the on position because it's going to be in the off position while we're doing all the hookup. I'll turn it on. First and easiest thing to test is the horn. I'll blow the horn. Just push the button. All right, horn works. If that horn works, then I'm 99% sure everything else is going to work on the load side. I'll turn on the radio, okay? I'll turn on the nav lights. I'll actually get down and hit the switch, and I'll turn on, I'll check the RF receiver to make sure the RF receiver is receiving power through the fuse block and the switch itself that I put in. And if those lights are working, we are good to go. I'll turn everything there on the load side off, and then the only thing I need to do is check the engine. I'll have the engine drop down into the trough full of water. I'll hit the engine switch, the ignition switch. She starts up, and I'll be checking that LED light extension to see what's happening when that's going on. And then probably what I do, with the engine running, I'll check the LED and start turning some other things on, like the radio, the lights, and this kind of stuff, just to see how my LED extension, what kind of signal I'm getting off of that. Does it change? All right. So there you go. That's my system. That's how it's going to work. All we got to do now is get out there and turn some wrenches. Do one of these. It'll help you.
Alright, here we go. Something you don't know is this is the third time I've done this sequence, and this new program I got is kicking me to death. Alright, nonetheless, that's where the battery compartment is located, underneath that seat there. It's the port side, at the rear, or at the stern of the boat. We're going to take a look at what happens when we pull it up. Here you can see the seat opened up, and it doesn't take much to figure out you're not going to install a battery system, everything with the seat still on. So one of the first steps that I've got to do is take that seat off, and I've got to be very, very careful, as you should be as well, probably, because the hinges are sharper than razor blades, and I don't want that thing falling over there and cutting up any of my my vinyl. So it's real careful time taking off the seat. Here's kind of a long shot of what looks like we finally got the seat off. No problem. That was only 4 screws, and like I said, have to be careful of the hinges because they are really sharp. You'll see how the battery is originally oriented. That's put back in and hooked up so you could see that after I've done the talking head and brought the battery in. That storage area is not just for the batteries. That's where I keep my fenders and some extra line or rope to you newcomers. I remember the first time I ever went sailing, a guy asked me, he said, "Hand me a line." I said, "Sure, take my wife, please." But he had no sense of humor. Henny Youngman, you gotta be old. Most of you aren't. Anyway, that's what it looks like with the battery originally laid in. Here you can see the battery's been removed, and I've reoriented the tray, the mounting tray that the battery sits in. This is for the Group 24 start battery that came with the boat. I changed my mind later on and ended up kind of like pushing it forward. When I mean forward, I mean toward the gunnel of the boat, and I put the Group 31 where you now see the Group 24 tray. Notice all the wires in there and the cables. There's a lot of wires, a lot of cables. You can very easily get mixed up. So a lot of guys harass me about the fact that I label my cables. I don't care. I label them. I want to know what cable I'm messing with. And do you see the orange, kind of orange yellowish piece of rope coming out? That's parachute cord that you can get at Walmart. That's a pull rope. In other words, the first time you pull something through, you're not going to have any other way to do it than to fish it, grab it, and cuss a lot and get your hands cut on the aluminum and everything. When you push your first item through, always hook 2, not 1, 2 pull cords to it. Then the next time you pull something through, make sure you secure one of them so it can't be pulled through by accident, and you can use the that pull cord to pull whatever you have going through your conduit or your path or whatever, with that cord, and it makes life a whole lot easier. And you just keep rotating the two. Just a little hint. What you see here laid out are just about the vast majority of the tools that I'm going to use, and all the little parts, pieces, nuts, bolts. If you see that little red thing there about 3/4 to the right up the seat, that's the interrupt isolator. Notice also that it got towels on the seat. Don't mess your seats up. You can, drop something sharp and cut your seats up pretty easy when you're dealing with this. If you look down at the bottom center, you'll see my bulkhead that I built, and you'll also see that both the switch and the ACR is already mounted on it. I was doing some dry fitting, that's all. The switch will come off, and you'll understand very clearly why the switch comes off, because you do not want to try and put items on there with the switch mounted. ACR, no problem. ACR stayed on. But that's everything almost everything I'm going to use. And if you look in the upper right hand corner, you can see my cables for my batteries and for my ACR, both my positive and negative cables. Here's a good close-up of the switch, which we could not get while we were doing the talking head. Sorry about that. Notice there's an OFF, that's an off position at the very top. At 3 o'clock, there's an on position, and at somewhere around 5 o'clock, there's a combined batteries. Now, you can go into just about any marine store and find switches that are manual, and generally there'll be something like off at the top, battery 1 on the left, battery 2 on the right, and both batteries down at the bottom. But they generally aren't working with automatic charger relays like this system is. I don't want to say, if you remember the old Ronco commercials, set it and forget it, but this is almost just like that. Once you turn it on, it's going to take care of charging the batteries because of how you have it hooked up to both the switch and the ACR. Here we see the back of the switch, and I think if you look at that, you can understand now what I mean when I say right now it's oriented upright. Okay, the top is actually the top as you're looking at it. If you were to turn it around and rotate it, however, you could turn that thing sideways, and you could kind of like spin it, and all the lugs look the same. And I know it says 1 and 2. But in the heat of putting things in, sometimes you'll lose track of that. Maybe, I don't know. But the point is, notice how I have them labeled. I really recommend labeling those things. If you'll see in the upper left-hand lug, that says load. If you look at the lower left bottom lug, that says house, upside down, but it says house. Right-hand bottom lug says start. Those are your two batteries, a house and a start battery. The load, obviously, that's coming from the helm. And it's hard to see because of the shadow, but the upper right hand lug is the engine lug. Now, by having those labeled like that, it's real easy to keep them straight. You know what lug's what. There's no confusion, and you don't hurt yourself and you don't hurt any of your equipment. Hopefully you remember I said that we were going to wire up as much as we can on the switch, which is just about everything. It is everything, before we actually mount it to the bulkhead, because once you mount that bad boy to the bulkhead, you're not getting in there with wrenches and cables or wires or anything like that. The first two cables that I put on here are the battery cables. The house is on the left, and the cable on the right is a start battery. Put them on there, snug them down real tight with the nuts that came with it, which have a flared bottom to keep things nice and flat. And I put another nut on top of that to help lock it down. I like doing that. Some people use lock washers. I like just putting another nut on there and locking it down tight. Now, some people will have a heart attack with the fact that I use some black tape on the bottom of a positive cable. Those cables had quite a bit of metal exposed going down where they were hooked up, and I don't like that, so I simply covered it with black tape. It's my boat. I know how I do things. If I had red tape, I would have used red tape, but I didn't, and I wasn't going to take an hour and a half a tank of gas to go to Lowe's and just buy some red tape. So I know what those cables are, and black tape's not going to confuse me down the road. It's just a protection to keep things from touching exposed metal that's got current going through it. That's all that is. Alright, now we're seeing the switch fully wired, and there's a mistake in there which I intentionally put in to kind of hopefully prove a point. Couldn't hold it up, obviously, because the wires or the cables down in the battery area were just too short, so I had to lay it down. Now, let's talk this orientation thing again and how we might get stuff confused if we don't label it. The two red cables that you see coming in from the top of the switch, those are the battery cables. If the switch is oriented upright, they should be coming out of the bottom, which they will be when I rotate that up and put it against the bulkhead and put the nuts and bolts on. All right, so no mistakes there. I've already labeled those. I already put those on when I had it standing out free and clear. If you will look over at the bottom left-hand lug, that is the engine cable coming in. All right, so that's hooked up, the only one that goes to that lug. If you look at the bottom right-hand lug, you'll see two cables coming in and one kind of semi-wire. You can call it a cable wire or whatever. All right, there's a mistake on there, and I did this intentionally to help show what I meant by that. First of all the cables have a little bit of black tape on them to cover the metal up. But you'll notice there's one cable that has black tape going up about 6 to 7 inches up it. And if you could read that label, it would say helm cable negative bus. It actually says my helm negative bus. So that should not be hooked there. That's not the negative bus. That's the switch. That's the positive position. So once I hook everything up, I guarantee I'm going to sit there and I'm going to go over, this is what should be going here. Is that what I've got? Check the label. Yes. This is what should be going here. Is that what I've got? Check the label. Yes. Well, when I looked at that and I saw, wait a minute, that says my helm cable negative bus, that doesn't go to the switch because that's the switch. That's not the negative bus. So I took the screws off, took it off, and the only thing that was left on there was the helm cable from the boat. All right, and my helm cable positive. Now the helm cable from the boat is the small wire that goes off to the left, and you can see the label, and at the end of the label there looks like a little black box that is going into. That's an inline fuse that they put on there. So I ended up removing the improper cable, but I just wanted to do this to show you how easy it is to make a mistake. But if you label things and if you go over them each time, make sure that you've got what you want, where you want it, then you'll be all right. You won't hurt anything. Well, we've got the switch fully wired, so we can just let it lay there. No big problem. We're not ready to hook it up to the, or mount it up to the bulkhead yet. What we're looking at now is the ACR. Before we mounted the ACR, or we really didn't have to. I think I put the cables on after I had the ACR mounted because they bend very easily, and just had to loosen up the nuts and put the cables over the posts and lock them back down with the nuts. If you see the big cable at the bottom left, you can see the letter H. That's for the house battery. You cannot see the letter S for the start battery on the right hand side, but that's what it is. House battery on the left, start battery on the right. Just follow the diagram that they give you. What I'm holding in my hand is the negative. That's the negative wire that's going to hook on the bottom. If you remember, along the bottom there were 3 posts. The one on the far left is the grounding post, and that grounding wire you have to make up and put a 1 amp fuse, inline fuse. No big deal. So we'll shove that thing onto the post in the middle. We're not going to put anything on. That's a starter interrupt, and we'll eventually put on If you see that red cable, it's already hooked up. Actually, see the red cable that kind of like goes across the ACR? Then that's my starter interrupt. No, it's not the starter interrupt. That's the LED extension. I'm sorry, my tongue covered my eye tooth. I couldn't see what I was saying. All right, so 2 cables, one for the batteries, house on the left, start on the right, holding the negative cable but getting ready to shove it on there, and the other end will go on to the negative bus, and I've already got the LED extension hooked up. That's all we have to do with that, and put the cover back on. Alrighty, now we have made a lot of headway and we're about 99% done. You can see how I mentioned that I had moved the group 24, which is my start battery, more closer to the gunnels, and then that's where I laid down my group 31 or my house battery tray. They're screwed in and they're secure. Be very careful, by the way, of how long of screw that you use. You're either going to use a 3/4 or a 1-inch. You're not going to use an 1.5 because you've probably got 3/4 decking, and if you're like me and you have some kind of metal undercladding, an 1.5 screw will pop through that in a heartbeat, and there you go. So the easiest thing to do is before you mount your first screw is hold your tray up, drop your screw in it, measure the screw. Is it over 3/4 inches long? Then use another screw. Some of them you can use inch-long screws because the battery tray is so thick that it takes it up. And if you actually try to use a 3/4 screw, it would mess you up, so you need to use the full inch. So because there wouldn't be enough grab because of the battery tray. All right, so enough on those trays. So there they are. One tray, as you can see, which is the Group 24, has a strap holder, and the other one has a screw-down metal post holder. No big deal either way on that. You can see the switch is in position. You can see the 2 wires coming out of the bottom of the switch at that point. Those are the battery wires. You can see how I've got them looping around so that they will go to the positive post on each battery. Because the positive posts are going to be closer to the fender that you see there. The wires, the cables that are coming out from underneath the ACR, they're kind of looping to the left. I'm pointing at them. They will eventually be moved over a little bit because they're going to hook to the same post as the switch cables, right? Yes, they are. And the 2 black cables that you see there are the negative cables for the batteries. Remember, the batteries will also have a negative post, and if you follow that back around, which is very difficult to see because it's up underneath the seat, they are already hooked to and locked down on the bus bar. You can see the cables there for the negative connection on the on an ACR that I haven't cleaned up yet. There's a little bit of cleaning left to do, but this is before we put the batteries in, and we're taking stock of what's all there. We're about ready to put the batteries in. Here you can see I've got both batteries laid in their appropriate trays, and I've got them locked down. You notice something that's missing? If you'll look over on the right hand side of each battery, all right, you'll see that there are 2 red cables going directly to the post and locked down with the nuts. What should go there according to BlueSeas? Well, that's where they want the isolator mount to go, so that you can isolate the cable coming from the ACR to the battery. So if there's ever any problem with that, there's a inline fuse mounted on the isolator, and it will blow and it will help protect the ACR. All right, but this is, remember I told you I couldn't find anybody that used that thing, but nonetheless, since they want it done, I'm going to go ahead and use it. I just wanted to show you what it looked like if you didn't use it. Don't forget the negative cables going to the batteries on each side there as well. The other side. Here you can see what the MRBF fuse block looks like mounted on the start battery. MRBF, in case I haven't mentioned, stands for Marine Rated battery fuse. That's marine rated battery fuse. Obviously fuses that can handle wet environments. So if you remember, the fuse block itself, the terminal, had a long bottom, and at one end there was a screw, not a screw, I'm sorry, there was a hole, and that hole is what you placed over the battery terminal lug there at the end there, as you can see on the right hand side. And on the other end, or the left hand side where you're looking at it, that's where the actual fuse itself was mounted. Remember the square fuse I held up and showed you with a hole in the center? That can only fit one way on there, and you put that bad boy on, and then you put the cable from the ACR. So that red cable on the left hand side closest to my middle finger there is the cable coming from the ACR, and you lock that down. Don't over tighten it too much, so I'm pretty sure you could probably crack that fuse, though, but just be careful. And the cable that's on the right hand side on the actual post itself, that is the cable coming from the switch. I say again, coming from the switch. Alright, so you're going to do the exact same thing on your house battery. This is the start battery. You're going to do the exact same thing on the house battery using the appropriate cable coming from the switch and from the ACR, and put them in the right positions. Alright, that's all there is to it. Nothing really complicated. Well, we've triple checked our wiring. We've made sure all our cables are tight and everything's where it's supposed to be. Time to do the test. And remember I said in the talking head, I hope I did, I think I did, that the easiest thing to test first of all is the horn. But what do we got to do first? If you remember, when we installed all that equipment and everything, we made sure that the switch was off in the OFF position. So before we come up and do any tests, we have to make sure that we turn the switch now to the on position. The on position, the 3 o'clock, not the both batteries, the on position, because you want to make sure that each individual battery is performing its function. So if we go over here, sit down and get up to the console, got my finger on the horn, I pushed the button, scared the heck out of the neighbor that was walking by. Yep, the horn works. Well, if the horn works, we know that 99% of everything probably else is going to work. At least that's my confidence level. So one of the other things I tested was the radio. You saw where the toggle switch was to the horn to the far right, and the one just right next to it to its left is what I use to turn on the radio. Alright, that's the toggle switch to put power to the radio. And I'm sorry about the reflections there. It was getting late in the day, but as you can see, the radio came on and it's telling me, hey, you don't have any Bluetooth things going on. I'm not really surprised because we've disconnected the batteries. There was zip power going to the radio, and so I'll have to, at the beginning of every season, do my Bluetoothing and make sure it's all ready to go. But the radio worked. I went on and did a few other tests and everything worked just fine on the house side, because remember, when you put it in your switch in the on position, the house battery does the house chores and the start battery does the start chores, starting the motor, and that's all they do. They don't cross paths at that point. Alright, now I'm going to have to go back on my word. I told you that I was going to go and test the find the starter wire for the isolation portion of the ACR, the little isolator thing. Decided not to do that. I pulled the switch again. I had pulled it once before, but I pulled the ignition switch and got down real close and noticed that that was gelled in. All the wires were gelled in, and to actually start poking holes in wires was not something I wanted to do, especially since I'm not going to use it. If you do decide to use it, what you can do is just take a pin, it's PIN, like for sewing, a needle, and stick it through the wire that you think's the appropriate wire, and connect your multimeter on there. Considering it's the wire that you think's the starter wire, you would hook your positive cable to the multimeter on there, and then you would stick your ground ground probe of the multimeter on a ground somewhere, connect it, and make sure you're at 20 volts DC. And obviously with the switch off there's going to be no power, but when you turn the switch on there should be a high jump of 12 to 14 volts, and when your motor starts and you release it, and the power should go back down to 0 even though the motor's still running and switches in the ignition position. All right, so I just decided there was too much damage. I was going to do too much damage to wires for something I wasn't going to use, and I just didn't do it. I'm sorry, sue me. No, don't sue me. But anyway, we knew that the house side works. I tested, like I said, I tested a few other things, some lights and stuff. So good to go. Now we just got to check the start battery. Here we are at the stern of the boat. Okay, you can see that nice trough that I built in the hose. That black, big black, kind of like hose thing going in there that's what it is. It's a water hose, and it's making sure that water keeps going in there in case the pee hole shoots some out to the side. And needless to say, always got a couple of leaks, so it's just keeping the water up to par. Alright, so went over after I tested all the stuff on the house battery and felt confident with the house battery, put the key in the ignition and turned the ignition. Motor cranked right up, went back, checked, make sure the pee hole was functioning correctly, because you want to make sure that the water is above the intake levels, because that's how it heats up. Don't ever run your motor without having it in either in water or using ears, and I just never have any luck with ears. So we know the motor's working. Start battery is working. We got start battery working. We got the house battery working. We're basically done. Just now clean up, make sure all the wires are covered and bundled up however they need to be, because I've got a 3/8 inch to a 1/2 inch gap between the bottom of my wall and the deck of my pontoon boat, because that way when it rains in there or people tromp in there, water can run off and run under the wall. However, anytime I have anything in the storage bays, I have to make sure that it's not loose or whatever, like extra line or rope or anything like that, because somehow it always manages to work its way underneath the wall and be flopping out in the breeze. So make sure all your wires are secured and taped up, or you can use those electric ties, whatever, and everything's good to go. But right now we have a 100% operational dual battery system.
Alright, table's empty. No more stuff on the table. The other half could walk in. I'd get away with it. She wouldn't know a thing. Don't tell her now. Alright. We got everything laid out. We made sure we had everything. All our components. We had the batteries that we wanted. We had all our cables that went from the batteries to the ACR and then to the switch. We had all our little things as far as our ground wires and all that other kind of stuff. You decide whether or not you want to use that start interrupt button. Start interrupt connector on the ACR. It's up to you. Definitely you want to use the LED thing. You have to run that wire. So there's going to be a little bit of wires you have to run, these kinds of things, especially if you're going to use the that little battery monitor that I showed you that I didn't have in the wiring diagram. Sorry, long day, tired. Okay, so that's just 2 wires, positive and negative. So hook straight to the battery, hook straight to that. In fact, you know, like I told you during the talking head, I'm thinking I'm going to get me another one of those and go ahead and put it on the start battery, just so I can monitor that too as well. Because it didn't break a bank, and it was good thing. It shows everything going on. Okay, so what did it cost? Won't cheap, but I tell you one thing. It was cheaper than having the boat guys do it. That's for daggum sure. When I purchased my boat and I was looking at the options, they said, "You want a dual battery system?" I said, "How much?" And I saw that. I go, "Woo! I hope lap dances come with that," because that was a ridiculous price, and I knew that I could do it. Now you have a good idea whether or not you can do it. All right. So you need to make that decision whether you want to hook up your boat, take it down to the boat guys, let them do it, or do you want to do it? Know more about your boat. The more you know about your boat, the better off you'll be, especially when you get out there on the lake or wherever you go and you break down. If you know how things are put together, you know when they break, you can find the break much easier and maybe even fix it right there on the lake. Have a little toolkit, have some extra wire, yada yada. All right, so let's go over the cost. What I'm going to do is flip up a slide here, do a little talk over, go over the slide with all the different costs on there. And I'm sure I left a couple of costs off, but it wouldn't be that much, okay? And it'll give you just a good nuclear idea of what it costs to do this. Cheaper somewhere else, more expensive somewhere else, undoubtedly. But at least now you know, once you see this little laydown of what the costs were, how much you will have to invest, and you can use it to compare. If you call up your boat guy and say, here's what I want, what would you charge me for that? If he says less, tell me who he is. I need him to do some work on my boat then, okay? But odds are it'll be more. But then you lose all the information about how it was put in and what you did to make it work. All right, up to you. All right, let's go over the cost.
Alright, the first cost is either a cost for you or it's not a cost for you. For example, my start battery that came with the boat was a wet cell battery. I have absolutely no problems. They will do you a fine job on the pontoon boat and save you a lot of money. So I kept my start battery at no cost. Obviously, I did have to buy a deep cycle battery for my house battery, and that was the Duracell. It came in at $125. All right, I yielded to BlueSeas' adamant position about they really felt like the battery cable going from each battery to the ACR needed to be protected, so I bought 2 each MRBF battery terminal studs, and they came in at $64. The battery terminal studs are nothing without the fuses. You have to have fuses, and each one needed a fuse, and I bought a spare. So I bought 3 MRBF 60 amp fuses, of which one was a spare, and they came in at $60. I have it labeled here as 2 negative bus bars, of which one was a spare. It's a bus bar. It could be negative, it can be positive. It doesn't really matter. But I just call it a negative bus bar. They were 20 bucks each, so both bus bars came in at $40. I decided to get not only a battery monitor for the house battery, but a battery monitor for the start battery as well. Both of those, the Drox came in at $32 for both. Alright, moving on to page 2 of costs. I had to get me 6 battery cables. I had to get 4 positive ones, they were red, and I had to get 2 negative ones that were black. Alright, they came in at $65. When you look at all the wire that I had to get, for everything that I used, this may be a little high because I didn't have all the receipts, but I'm going to say somewhere around about $100 for all the wire that I needed to make the 22-foot poles and to make the short cable, ground peg cables, and the whole 9 yards. So probably a little high, but worst case, $100. If you remember, the ACR had to be grounded, and in that ground wire there had to be a 1 amp fuse and a fuse holder, obviously. So that came in at about $8. Had to get a battery tray to mount the Group 31, the new house battery in, and decided to get a really good one, and that came in at $16. If you remember, I was going to use that LED extension, and in order to do that I had to buy a LED light, and I bought a spare just in case I blew it up or something went wrong. So 2 LED lights came in at $12, of which again 1 was a spare. And of course, the whole thing would have been for nothing had I not bought the BlueSeas Add A Battery kit. And once again, I got the one for 120 amps. The 65 amp one is cheaper. Not that much, but some. So I paid about $140 for the Add A Battery kit. All right, drum roll, please. We're at the part where I can give you the approximate total cost, and I'm always going to say approximate because I'm sure I left something off, but it would be nothing huge for sure. That's definite. But let's look at the total cost. All right, here we are. Approximate total costs are about $662. Don't forget, I bought some spare parts that you might not want to buy spare parts for, but I did. And, that's not a bad little price, to tell you the truth. I know that when my boat rep gave me his price, it was much higher. And it was not with the BlueSeas Add A Battery system. It was with the standard flip battery 1, flip battery 2. I had to do it myself. So when you get an estimate, make sure you get a detailed estimate using, say, the BlueSeas Add A Battery system or just a simple flip system. And don't hold it against the guys. They got to make a living too. They got to feed their family. So a lot of the costs are going to be labor costs, and there is a lot of work in this thing. But I'm pretty sure that you could do it. But make sure that you think that you can do it and do your research and find out. But we're looking somewhere around $662.
All right, there it is. Okay, won't break a bank for sure, but you can do it cheaper, I think, than if you took it off to your boat dealer. That's up to you. All right, tried my best to give you a video here with as much detail as I could. Sorry the camera ain't the greatest. Sorry I ain't the greatest. Both of us are older than dirt, so but I think there's enough information here that you could get out there and give it a good, safe try. Do a little bit more research, maybe even some areas. But you should be able, I think, after watching this, to install your own dual battery system, at least using the BlueSeas Add A Battery kit. I ain't getting nothing from them. I wish they did. They ought to send me something. But we know they won't. That's okay. Just enjoy it. Be safe with your boat. Have a good time. You see a boater out there needs some help, help them out. Don't leave them sitting there floating in, broke down or something like that, because your day may come. Good times. Stay safe.